At 8:43 in the morning, you are in the kitchen rinsing a mug. The kettle clicks off. Outside, it is just another weekday. Traffic hushed but steady. A dog barking somewhere down the block. Your phone face down on the counter. The first thing you notice is the sound, not the kettle, not the street. A rising synthetic tone from your phone, insistent and wrong. Then every device in the apartment seems to vibrate at once. The message on your screen is short, in all caps, and your brain refuses to absorb it the first time you read it. You are still staring at the words when the sirens begin. A distant wail, then closer. Car alarms join in, a chorus of small machines panicking for you. You think, test, glitch, overreaction. Your hand goes automatically to the window, then the light changes. It is not a normal flash. It is a white that erases shadow for a fraction of a second, followed by a pause, so deep it feels like the air itself has stopped. No traffic, no dog, just a low, rolling noise arriving a moment later, like distant thunder that never learned to end. The mug is still in your hand. A drop of water rolls down your wrist. You are halfway between the window and the hallway, between disbelief and something else. This is the moment you understand you do not get to be confused anymore. You have to move. The time is still 8:43. Less than 5 minutes have passed since the alert. You are in your kitchen, mid-step toward the window. This is where the first survival decision lives. Stay exposed or move inward. You stop yourself. One thought, inside. Now you step away from the glass. Every civil defense manual for nuclear incidents says the same thing in different words. Distance and shielding matter. Walls, interior rooms, and floors of concrete or brick between you and the outside can cut your exposure dramatically. You do not need to understand the physics, you need to obey it. Action, you grab your phone and a battery-powered radio from the counter. You call out, once, for anyone else in the apartment. Away from the windows, inside now. You do not waste time arguing. You move toward the most interior part of your home. A hallway between rooms, no external walls, no windows. As you walk, you note doorways, heavy furniture. You can later reposition for shielding, the location of your bathroom and water. Your heart is pounding. Your thoughts start to scatter. Who else? Where did it hit? Is this real? You pull them back. Name the moment. First 5 minutes. Your job in this window is not to know everything. Your job is to get to the safest place available and bring others with you. At the edge of the hallway, you pause just long enough to say to yourself, move first. Think there. As you cross into the inner hallway, you glance back once at the bright rectangle of the kitchen window and register a simple rule. The more you cannot see the outside, the safer you are likely becoming. By the time 10 minutes have passed since the alert, you are in the inner part of your home. You take stock. You pick an interior room or hallway with no windows and the fewest external walls, a bathroom, a walk-in closet, or that narrow corridor between bedrooms. Buildings with more dense material like concrete or brick protect better than thin wood or glass. You remember, fallout is radioactive dust and debris that will settle outside after the blast, especially downwind. The first hours are the most dangerous. Your goal is to put mass between you and that dust. You flick off lights you do not need. You close interior doors to create layers. You quickly look for 3 essentials in reach: water, food that does not need cooking, and light. You grab a small lamp or flashlight and pull it into your chosen space. Psychologically, this is when your brain wants to argue with reality. Maybe it was a conventional explosion. Maybe they will say it is a false alarm. Maybe I am overreacting. You answer those thoughts with one sentence. Overreacting into safety is better than underreacting into exposure. You begin a simple grounding exercise as you move. Count your steps to the bathroom. Feel the cool wall under your fingers. Listen for the sound of sirens or distant impacts. This keeps your mind in the present task, not in imagined futures. As you close the last door, you notice the thin gap at the bottom and make a mental note you will need to seal that. Around the 15-minute mark, your instinct is to reach out. You want to call everyone. You want answers. There is a right way to do this. You send one short message to your closest circle, a text that transmits quickly even on congested networks. Alert, at home, sheltering inside in interior room. Are you inside? You do not write a long explanation. You do not wait for replies before you act. You avoid making long calls now. Networks may already be overloaded, and every minute you remain in a more exposed position to get better reception is a minute spent less protected. You can bring your phone into the inner room. Signal often penetrates interior spaces. Civil defense principle. In the first moments after a nuclear detonation, your priority is getting sheltered, not getting information. Official fallout guidance recommends staying inside for at least 24 to 48 hours if you are within potential fallout zones, because radiation from fallout decays rapidly at first. Every hour you delay sheltering increases exposure. Psychologically, you feel guilt rise. What about neighbors? The older man on the third floor? The kids across the hall? You make a hard choice. You cannot save everyone by yourself. If you have seconds and they are within earshot, you shout once down the hallway, "Get inside, away from windows, inner rooms." Then you go back in and close your door. You tame the urge to scroll endlessly. You set your phone to low brightness, silence non-emergency notifications, and keep it nearby, but not in your hand. Drawing this boundary between connection and cutoff is emotionally costly. But it also marks the beginning of your mental discipline. You have started to act like someone whose primary job, right now, is to survive. You turn on the radio briefly, scan the dial, hear only bursts of static and an automated warning tone. You switch it off for the moment, promising yourself you will try again once the room is secured. By the half-hour mark, the initial wave of shock is starting to fade. This is when panic often tries to rush back in. You do something concrete to keep it out. You begin sealing your shelter. Fallout enters buildings primarily through openings, doors, windows, vents. You cannot make your home airtight, and you do not need to. You only need to reduce direct infiltration of dust. You take towels, spare clothes, or blankets and press them along the bottom of the door leading into your shelter space. You tape over larger gaps if you have tape. You consider which windows are closest beyond your shelter. If time allows, you step out briefly to close curtains, blinds, and any open windows, then return and reseal your inner space. You look around for dense objects you can move, a bookcase, a mattress, plastic storage bins. You slide them against the wall, facing the outside of the building, or against the door leading to more exposed areas. Every extra layer between you and outside fallout is shielding, mass that intercepts radiation. Civil defense principle, shielding and distance both reduce dose. An interior room with several walls and heavy objects around it can dramatically lower exposure compared to standing at a window or outside. You do not need sandbags, you use what you have: books, water containers, furniture. As you push the bookcase, you narrate your actions quietly in your mind. This reduces radiation. This blocks dust. This is worth my effort. It keeps your physical strain tied to a clear purpose, not a vague sense of doing something. At the end of this 30-minute block, your shelter looks different, less like a normal room, more like a cocoon. That visual change reinforces a truth. Whatever is happening outside, you are not passive. You are constructing safety. You notice your throat is dry. You think about water and realize the next phase is rationing, not comfort. By about the first hour, the outside situation may still be unclear. You still do not know which city was hit, how many times, or what the fallout pattern will be. But there is one thing you can control: how you manage what is inside your shelter. You take inventory. In the low light of your hallway or closet, you count how many bottles of water you have, how much non-perishable food is within reach: canned goods, peanut butter, crackers, nuts. You do not empty your kitchen. You gather enough to last at least 24 to 48 hours in this inner space. Civil defense guidance generally recommends at least several liters of drinking water per person per day, but in an immediate crisis, you prioritize having water over meeting ideal volumes. You can ration later. You cannot conjure water you did not bring in. You mark one bottle mentally as today. You do not chug. You take a small drink, wetting your mouth, then close it firmly. If you have a pen or marker, you label the bottle with the date and day 1. This simple act becomes a physical anchor. The water is your timeline. You set up a small station: radio, flashlight, phone, notebook, and pen if you have them, near the safest corner of the room. You choose a spot to sit or lie that is furthest from the door and any external wall. You establish a tiny routine. Every 15 minutes, you will check your posture, relax your shoulders, and breathe slowly. In for 3 counts, out for 4. You write this down. Breathe, shoulders down, jaw unclench. This gives your mind something repetitive and calming to return to. As the first hour closes, you notice that fear has a pattern. It spikes, then it ebbs. Each time you complete a concrete task, sealing, arranging water, labeling, the spike recedes a little faster. You reach for the radio again, ready to let information in, but only in controlled doses. About 90 minutes in, the urge to know everything is intense. You pick up the radio and your phone, but you decide how to use them rather than letting them use you. You turn on the battery-powered radio and slowly tune across AM and FM bands. You listen for official emergency broadcasts, clear tones, repeated messages, government station IDs. You may hear a civil defense-style instruction: shelter in place, stay indoors, avoid using roads. You may hear nothing but static. Civil defense principle: communication may be fragmentary or contradictory in the first hours. Your survival does not depend on knowing every detail. It depends on maintaining your shelter and minimizing exposure. Use information to adjust your behavior only when it is clear and actionable. You allow yourself 5 minutes of scanning, then you turn the radio back down or off. If you leave it hissing at you, your anxiety will rise. Short, scheduled check-ins prevent obsession. On your phone, you resist social media. You check for official alerts from government agencies or trusted emergency apps. You avoid sharing rumors. If someone texts, "Are we evacuating? Should we drive out of the city?" You answer with what you know. "I am sheltering inside in an interior room, away from windows." Guidance says stay inside for at least 24 hours to avoid fallout. I suggest you do the same. You create a simple rule: no doom scrolling. Anytime your thumb drifts to refresh a feed, you quietly say to yourself, "Wait, not now." Then you put the phone face down. Information can feel like control, but in a nuclear event, misplaced information seeking can pull you toward dangerous decisions, like going outside when fallout is beginning to settle. Your discipline in limiting noise is a survival skill, not a denial. You notice a faint knocking sound from somewhere in the building. A neighbor's door, perhaps. Your chest tightens. You realize the next challenge will not be supplies, it will be people. By the third hour, your hands have mostly stopped shaking. The light seeping under the door has shifted as the day moves on, casting different shadows across your improvised shelter. Then you hear it, a knock, not on your shelter door, but somewhere else in the hallway. A voice calling a name, another voice, closer to crying, asking, "Can we come in?" You freeze, and then you remind yourself. This is when panic tries to take over. You push it back with deliberate effort. Civil defense principle, opening doors and moving in and out increases the chance of bringing fallout dust into your shelter. If contaminated dust is on someone's clothing or hair, welcoming them in without decontamination could expose everyone inside your protected space. The safest move is for each household to shelter where they are and avoid unnecessary movement during the critical first hours. Psychologically, this is brutal. You feel selfish, cruel even, staying behind a sealed door while someone else is in the corridor, frightened and alone. You whisper through the gap, keeping your voice calm and clear. "I'm here. Go inside, away from windows. Seal your doors. Use an inside room. Put towels under the door." You keep your instructions short, practical, repeatable. You do not open your door unless there is immediate, life-threatening danger on the other side. Fire, structural collapse, someone bleeding out. If you do have to help someone in, you are ready with a procedure. You would have them remove outer clothing in the entry area, bag it if possible, and wash exposed skin with soap and water before entering deeper into the shelter. But you know this increases risk and complexity significantly. To handle the guilt, you name it. "This feels wrong." Then you answer it. "But leaving this shelter would put us all in more danger. Staying inside is how I protect myself and anyone already here with me." Survival in a nuclear crisis involves moral injuries as well as physical risk. Recognizing that pain does not remove it, but it does keep you from making impulsive, exposing choices just to feel less bad for a moment. The guilt is real. The danger is also real. You hold both truths without letting either one make your decisions for you. When the hallway falls quiet again, you notice the air in your shelter feels warmer, more still. Time has slowed to something thick and heavy. And the next test is monotony, the long stretch of hours with nothing to do but wait. By around the 6th hour, afternoon light has softened outside your sealed space. You have been inside your shelter long enough for the initial adrenaline to drain completely. Fatigue and restlessness creep in like unwelcome guests. This is a dangerous time not because of radiation, but because of human impatience. The urge to do something, anything, to break the stillness. You build a microschedule. On a piece of paper or in your phone's notes, you divide the next 6 hours into small blocks. Check radio at the top of each hour. Drink a small amount of water every 2 hours. Stretch legs in place. Use the bathroom when needed. Practice breathing exercises. Try to sleep for a short period, even if sleep seems impossible. Civil defense principle, fallout radiation is strongest in the first hours after detonation and decreases significantly with time, dropping to about 1/10 of its initial intensity after 7 hours and to about 100th after 2 days, following classic decay models. That means every hour you stay sheltered is helping your odds substantially. Knowing this scientific fact makes your routine feel meaningful rather than arbitrary. You are not just waiting, you are letting physics work in your favor. You mark the time each hour physically, a line on paper, a hash mark on the label of your water bottle. The bottle becomes not just hydration, but a clock, a calendar, a record of endurance. You treat small tasks as missions with clear objectives. In this hour, my job is to keep breathing slow and shoulders relaxed. In this hour, my job is to listen to the radio for 5 minutes, then accept what I hear or don't hear without spiraling. Each mission gives your mind something concrete to accomplish. You accept boredom as a tool, not an enemy. The less stimulation, the less your body burns energy and water. You remind yourself, stillness is not failure, it is strategy. The discomfort of doing nothing is preferable to the danger of doing something reckless. By the end of the 6th hour, you may feel slightly detached, as if the world has shrunk to this room, this bottle, this dim light filtering through sealed gaps. That narrowing is uncomfortable, but it also helps you survive by cutting out unreachable problems and impossible decisions. Turning the radio on briefly, you catch the fragment of a broadcast. Stay indoors, do not attempt to evacuate, await further instructions. The voice is distant and mechanical, but it confirms what you are already doing. You are on the right path. By 12 hours after the first flash, night has fallen. In your shelter, the shift is subtle. The faint light under the door grows thinner, cooler, then disappears entirely. You may have had brief periods of sleep, but real rest is difficult when your body remains tensed for danger that you cannot see or predict. You prepare for the long dark. You ensure your flashlight has fresh batteries and keep it within reach, but turned off to conserve power. You will use it only when absolutely necessary, to find the water bottle, to check on someone else in the shelter, to read a critical message. If you have candles, you consider the fire risk carefully. In a small, sealed space with limited ventilation, an open flame is a last resort, not a comfort. Civil defense principle. Most guidance suggests staying in your protected space for at least 24 hours, and longer if you are close to ground zero or in a high fallout zone. Leaving at night offers you no advantage. Visibility is low, streets may be impassable, and emergency services are overwhelmed with critical cases. It is safer to endure the night inside, no matter how long it feels. Nighttime amplifies fear in ways daylight does not. Sounds from the building, creaks, distant voices, maybe the faint whoop of sirens far away, loom larger in the darkness. Your mind invents scenarios for each noise. Footsteps become intruders, settling wood becomes structural collapse, silence becomes abandonment. You counter this with a deliberate thought-watching exercise. When an image appears, streets in chaos, soldiers at your door, loved ones lost in places you cannot reach, you silently label it image. You do not argue with it or try to convince yourself it is not real. You simply acknowledge it and let it pass like a cloud moving across the sky. Then you bring your attention back to a physical anchor, your hand on the textured wall, your breath moving your chest in and out, the slight rustle of fabric when you adjust your position. Internal thoughts become concise mantras. Breathe. Stay. Wait. This hour will pass. Night makes you confront how little you know. You do not know which city was hit. You do not know how many detonations occurred. You may not know anyone who has real answers. The radio offers fragments, not certainty. Accepting that ignorance without letting it spiral into panic is one of the hardest tasks of this first day. At some point in the dark, you feel for the door handle. It is cool, still, unchanged. You do not open it. You note that the act of touching it without turning it has become its own ritual, a way to feel connected to the rest of the world without breaking your protective boundary. The door is still there, the world is still there, and you are still here, waiting. Around 18 hours in, sometime in the early pre-dawn, your body hurts. Your back is stiff from the floor or the narrow seat you have been occupying. Your legs tingle from cramped positions held too long. You may feel a dull headache from stale air and accumulated tension. Your mouth tastes stale despite the water you have been rationing. You give yourself permission to adjust. You carefully open your shelter door just enough to step into the adjacent interior space, a bathroom or inner hallway, keeping away from any external walls or windows. You stretch slowly, roll your shoulders, flex your feet, bend your knees. You keep this excursion brief, just a few minutes, then reseal the door with your towels or blankets, pressing them firmly into the gap. Civil defense principle. Limited movement within the protected envelope of your home is acceptable as long as you avoid opening pathways to the outside. The goal is to maintain shielding and minimize airflow from contaminated zones, not to imprison yourself unnecessarily in one corner. You can move between interior spaces. You cannot move toward windows or exterior doors. You frame this stretch as maintenance, not as exploration. You are not checking outside, you are caring for the body that has to endure several more hours. You might quietly say to yourself, "This is allowed, this is necessary." You check your water bottle. With relief, you see that your careful rationing has left more than half for the remaining hours. That visual confirmation of sufficiency calms a deep, animal part of your brain that has been worrying about scarcity. You have enough. You will make it to the next checkpoint. By this point, your survival is less about heroism and more about stubbornness. You are practicing the unglamorous skill of not quitting on your own safety plan. No one will give you a medal for sitting in a dark hallway for 18 hours. But sitting in that dark hallway is exactly what keeps you alive. You decide that at the 24-hour mark, you will reassess everything, your supplies, your condition, the information available. That becomes your new mental horizon, not when this is all over, but when I reach day 1 complete, one milestone at a time. By 21 hours, dawn is approaching. The darkness under the door begins to lighten almost imperceptibly. You flick the radio on again, tuning slowly through the bands. This time, amid the static, a more consistent broadcast emerges. The voice is flat but clear, government-issued instructions repeating on a loop, the same phrases cycling every few minutes. You hear phrases like, "Do not attempt to self-evacuate," "Remain sheltered in interior rooms," "Fallout levels are highest in the first day and will decrease over time," "Emergency services are prioritizing critical zones." The message may confirm that a nuclear detonation occurred in or near your city. It may mention other regions affected. It is sobering, but also strangely grounding to hear official confirmation of what you have been living through. You listen carefully for any mention of time frames and local conditions. If the broadcast suggests remaining indoors for an additional day in your area, you adjust your mental plan accordingly. You take mental note of any advice on venting rooms later, decontaminating surfaces, or seeking official shelters when authorities announce it is safe to move. Civil defense principle. Authorities will base public guidance on radiation measurements from monitoring stations and computer models of fallout plumes. Their recommendations may be conservative, erring on the side of caution. In this case, overly cautious still favors your survival. It is better to stay inside longer than necessary than to leave too early and increase your exposure. You notice that hearing confirmation, even of bad news, reduces a certain kind of anxiety. The unknown has become partially known. The worst has a name now, a shape, a set of instructions attached to it. You let yourself feel both grief and relief at the same time. You may cry quietly. That is not weakness. It is a release valve that your body needs. The broadcast underlines something you have already lived. Your actions in the first day, staying inside, using distance and shielding, minimizing information-induced panic, resisting the urge to flee, mattered. You did what the instructions are now telling people to do. You were ahead of the official guidance, not behind it. As the message loops for the third time, you turn the volume down to just above a whisper and set the radio where you can hear the reassurance of an ongoing human voice without being overwhelmed by repetitive details. The voice becomes background, proof that systems still function, that someone is still broadcasting, that you are not entirely alone. At roughly 24 hours after the first flash, light seeps under the door more strongly than it has since yesterday morning. It is morning again. You have completed the first full cycle of day and night. You are still here. You assess systematically, going through a mental checklist. You check yourself and anyone with you for acute symptoms of radiation exposure, extreme nausea, vomiting, confusion, bleeding gums. Their absence is a good sign, though not a guarantee of safety. You look at your supplies, water remaining, food untouched or partially used, battery levels on radio and flashlight. You take inventory of what you have left and what you might need for another day. You turn the radio up for a full cycle of the emergency broadcast. If officials are now advising certain neighborhoods to relocate to community shelters or specific facilities, you note whether your area is mentioned. If they still instruct most people to remain sheltered, you follow that guidance without second-guessing. Civil defense principle, because fallout radiation decays rapidly at first. Dose rates after 24 hours are significantly lower than in the first few hours, especially if you are not extremely close to ground zero. That does not mean it is safe to wander outside freely. It means that limited, careful movement later, when officially advised, becomes more possible. The danger has not ended, but it has diminished. You feel a quiet pride mixed with lingering fear. You have evidence now that you did not have before. You can follow a plan under extreme stress. You resisted the impulse to flee when every instinct screamed at you to run. You held your boundaries with neighbors even when guilt told you to open the door. You rationed water instead of drinking freely. You endured boredom and fear without breaking. You may mark the wall with a simple note. Day 1 stayed inside. It is not a slogan or a boast. It is a record, a piece of evidence that you made it through. You realize that survival has been, in large part, a series of small, unglamorous refusals, refusing to open the door, refusing to scroll endlessly through catastrophe feeds, refusing to let panic choose for you when discipline was harder but safer. You unscrew the day 1 water bottle and finish what remains. The water tastes flat and warm, but it tastes like accomplishment. Then you pick up the next bottle and, with the same pen, write Day 2 on its side. The timeline continues. It is now the first morning after, somewhere past the 24-hour mark. Outside, the world has changed in ways you can not yet see. Inside, your shelter holds the imprint of every decision you made. Towels pressed against the door, shifted furniture creating barriers, empty wrappers stacked neatly aside, marks on paper or plastic recording hours you will not forget. You do not rush to unseal everything. You open the door slightly to the inner parts of your home to allow fresh air from cleaner zones, still avoiding direct paths to the outside. You do not open windows yet unless official guidance specifically says it is safe. If broadcasts suggest that fallout in your area is low and that short trips to safer official shelters are now recommended, you begin to prepare for a controlled movement. Clothing to cover all exposed skin, a mask or cloth over mouth and nose, route planned with minimal time outdoors. Civil defense principle. When it is time to move, minimizing time outside and maximizing coverage of skin reduces additional exposure. Brushing off clothing outdoors before re-entering a building, washing exposed skin thoroughly with soap and water, and avoiding bringing shoes or outer layers into your new shelter space all help reduce contamination. Every precaution matters. Whatever the next instruction is, stay sheltered longer or move to a new location, you apply the same mindset that carried you through day 1, clear steps, controlled breathing, limited focus on what you can actually control. You tell yourself, I got through the first day, I can get through the next step, one decision at a time. There is no applause, no cinematic rescue helicopter descending from the sky. There is only the low murmur of the radio settling into a more structured broadcast schedule, the faint light through the still sealed edges of your window, the ink of yesterday's date on an empty plastic bottle. You sit for a moment with that bottle in your hand, thumb resting on the words Day 1. Outside, a siren rises and falls in the distance, then fades into silence. Inside, the radio static shifts, and for the first time since the flash, you hear a live human voice, not a recording, reading out a list of shelters and instructions for the hours ahead. You look at the sealed door, the radio, the bottle. They are ordinary objects, things you owned before this morning and will own after. Today they are also proof that when everything ruptured, you chose to stay, to shield, to wait, and that quiet choice kept you alive long enough to hear that voice. The mug from yesterday morning is still on the kitchen counter, somewhere beyond the sealed doors. You do not remember putting it down. You remember only the moment the light changed, and everything after it became a series of decisions you made one breath at a time. You have survived the first day. The crisis continues outside your walls, and there will be more decisions ahead, harder ones perhaps involving movement and exposure and choices you cannot yet imagine. But you have learned the most important lesson already. You know how to wait, and waiting, it turns out, was the hardest and most important thing you could do. The bottle sits empty in your hand. The radio murmurs. The light under the door grows stronger. Day 2 begins.